So last month I decided I was finally going to go ahead and cancel my Game Pass Ultimate subscription, and I did exactly that. And originally I talked about making this video because I was pretty sure that I was going to make a video just called Why I Cancel Game Pass. But after I started working on that video, I kind of realized that I'm not just canceling Game Pass, but in a way I've kind of stepped away from the Xbox entirely lately. And that's what I wanted to talk about today, are just some of the reasons that I'm doing that. And just to set the stage, I'm not going to spend the next 10 minutes just ranting about how much I hate Xbox or something like that. Rather, I just wanted to take a nuanced look at some of the reasons that I myself haven't really found the platform to be that appealing lately, and ultimately it made pulling the plug on Game Pass Ultimate just a little bit easier to do. But first, just a little bit of my personal history with the Xbox. I've actually been a pretty big fan of the Xbox since it first debuted way back in the early 2000s. Initially, I did not grab the system because I thought Microsoft was kind of unproven in the arena, and I really wanted to see what they would come out with. But ultimately, I will never forget the game that absolutely won me over, and it wasn't a Microsoft first-party game. Rather, it was a game that was, at the time, an original Xbox exclusive before it would eventually make its way to other platforms, and that would have been the original Splinter Cell. I vividly remember going into like a local Walmart or someplace where they had the demo unit set up, and I absolutely loved everything I saw in that demo for the brief amount of time that I spent with it, especially as somebody who was a Metal Gear Solid fan. But by far the biggest draw for the original Xbox, and the thing that really got me into the ecosystem to begin with, was Xbox Live. At the time, I lived about 3 hours away from my parents, my dad was still very much gaming the same way he is today, and we used to use Xbox Live to play games like Crimson Skies together, despite the fact that we were like 3 hours apart. And moving forward, I picked up every Xbox since. I absolutely love the 360, and I spent way more time with that than I ever did my PS3. The Xbox One was not as appealing to me, mostly because they fumbled so hard out of the gate with the initial pricing and the DRM, and just a lot of stuff that really struck gamers the wrong way, which was a terrible generation for them to lose out on, by the way. And then moving up to the Xbox Series S and X, at least at launch, I thought those were really great systems. Initially, I started with the Xbox Series X, and while I will say I spent more time with the PS5 initially, and honestly would go on to spend even more time with it, but I'm getting ahead of myself here, I really did love the Series X at launch, and that was for a few reasons. One, I really liked the physical design of the console, and I thought it was a little bit more subdued than the more alien look of the PlayStation 5. And then also, I really liked that Microsoft was placing a huge emphasis on backwards compatibility, and the idea that I could go back and play games like Crimson Skies from about 20 years ago was just really appealing to me, and in turn, the Xbox became my de facto system to buy games for any multi-platform releases. I basically just assumed that moving forward, they would continue to honor that sort of backward compatibility, and that it would be kind of the best place for me to go ahead and make all my digital purchases and have my largest physical collection. At least at first. As time went on, the PlayStation 5 started to get more and more of my playtime, not just because it had a lot of really great exclusives that I couldn't get anywhere else until later on when they started putting some of those on PC, I guess, but also because functionally speaking, there were just a lot of advantages the PlayStation 5 had, and honestly still has over the Xbox, that makes it more appealing for me to play. For starters, build quality was always an issue for me when it came to the Xbox. Not the console itself necessarily, although I will say that periodically my Series X would just blink out its video signal even after I tried changing cables, and I really did not like the idea of trying to go back through like a return process or some kind of a warranty to get it like repaired or serviced. I was like, it only happens every now and then, and I guess I can live with it. But one of the things that really started to bother me is I broke 3 different Xbox Series controllers, and specifically I broke the left bumper button from playing Dead by Daylight. You have to hammer that button for skill checks, and I absolutely brutalized 3 of those controllers and had to get rid of them, which maybe that's just a user problem, right? Maybe I just really need to adjust how I interact with the button and not be so frantic about it. But I will say, around the time that I broke the 3rd one, I started playing Dead by Daylight on the PlayStation 5 instead, and I have never once had an issue with the DualSense controllers or anything like that breaking on me, so that was another feather in the cap for Sony, I guess. And another niche sort of advantage that the PS5 had over the Xbox that really grew on me over the past 5 years is the fact that it was so much easier for me to just capture footage, transfer that to an external drive, and then pop it over on my Mac to start editing footage for a lot of the videos that go out here on the channel. You can still do captures on the Xbox Series, don't get me wrong, but they also require you to use an NTFS formatted drive, which if I use that, I can plug into my Mac and my Mac can read it, but it can't write files to it, and that became at least a little bit of a hindrance to my workflows for making content here on the channel, so yeah, all these little things just sort of kept adding up, and before I knew it, there really weren't many times that I was really sitting down like really excited to play the Xbox. That is, until Game Pass really started to hit its stride, and in its heyday, Game Pass Ultimate was incredible. Even when they increased the price a little bit, I think from $14.99 to $19.99 before they did the most recent price hike up to $30, I was like, that's something I can live with because it's still an amazing library of games, and I also enjoy that I could get day one access to a lot of games that would appear on Xbox first. Whether it was Tony Hawk's Pro Skater 3 and 4 when that first came out, or Doom the Dark Ages, or South of Midnight, which honestly I never got a chance to play, I just installed it, unfortunately. But yeah, all this is to say the Xbox Series still had a lot of appeal for me, mostly on the strength of Game Pass at that point. Well, and provided I didn't play Dead by Daylight there and keep breaking controllers. But over the past year, I started seeing my time with the Xbox, despite the value that Game Pass represents, start to drop more and more. And I think that came down to a few key factors outside of what I've already mentioned about the PS5 putting up some pretty stiff competition. Another thing that I found was that almost all of my friends, except for two, had already moved on from the Xbox and were either playing on PC, PlayStation, or Nintendo Switch to a lesser degree, I guess. And that was really odd because for the longest time there, I feel like all of my friends only played on Xbox and that was their platform of choice, and because I was so used to using the Xbox Live Party system and I preferred its, ease of use, that was really where I liked to play the most myself. And even though I only had a couple of friends who were still kind of married to the Xbox platform, those were some really great friends, and I was absolutely not willing to entertain a scenario where I might not be able to play a game with them online. However, what ended up happening is most of the games that we started to play together ended up being cross-platform games, and not only were they cross-platform games, but they usually had native voice chat where I didn't really need Microsoft's Xbox Live Party chat anymore to stay in communication with them. On top of that, even if there were games where that would have been a barrier, Discord integration is now commonplace for both the PlayStation 5 and the Xbox Series X, so I had another avenue to continue to communicate with them, even if it was a little bit clunkier than just having native party chat. But beyond things like build quality or my own personal social gaming habits, I think the other thing that really started to make the Xbox a little bit less appealing in my eyes was the fact that all of their exclusives started being way less exclusive. And it's not that I need them to be exclusive necessarily because I want to win some kind of console war or I think Xbox is the best, I clearly don't, but there is something to be said for having solid exclusives for your platform. I mean, obviously Nintendo and Sony both don't have any shortage of amazing games that you can only play on those particular consoles, but when it came to Xbox, more and more we just started seeing a lot of the games that, were typically associated with the Xbox start to come over to other platforms. Whether that was Forza, Gears of War, Halo, Sea of Thieves, and I think there's probably a handful of others that I'm even forgetting off the top of my head right now, but honestly, it just didn't feel like the Xbox was as essential to my collection as it used to be. Now, none of these reasons taken in isolation is so egregious that I would just wholesale take the Xbox out of my play rotation or anything like that, but what I will say is that I think that over time they slowly started to add up, and I think it really came to a head with the price hikes over the past several months. Now, I'm not going to recap the entire pricing fiasco necessarily, but what I will say is that it did seem just kind of gross to me that even to get in on an Xbox Series S, you now had to spend $400 for the lowest tier model, and I think $600 for the lowest tier model of the Series X if you wanted to do that. And it wasn't just that they hiked the price on Game Pass while I had sort of dwindling interest in it, but also they changed the price for Game Pass after they just sort of boasted about $5 billion in profit through Game Pass, and then proceeded to lay off I think like 9,000 people, many of which were in the Xbox division. Kind of a mixed message. So yeah, to kind of wrap this whole thing up, do all of these reasons taken in aggregate make me a bona fide Xbox hater? No, they don't. Because Xbox has brought me all kinds of amazing gaming experiences through the years. Whether it was staying up late playing Halo 2 back in the day, or in the modern age playing Sea of Thieves with friends, probably even later than I played Halo 2, games like Fable, Gears of War, there are just so many cool things that Xbox has done that I would never write them off completely. But I will say I do think they've lost their way a little bit. I don't know if it's just a brand identity thing, or if there's something else at play where maybe some of the behind-the-scenes stakeholders of Microsoft are just sort of dictating some of these moves, and that's why it seems just so kind of weird, both for existing fans and stuff that is kind of off-putting, I think, to newcomers. But I really do hope Xbox gets back to its glory days and brings us something incredibly new and impressive with its next piece of hardware. I will say, though, that I'm a little skeptical on that hardware, considering they are pitching it as a PC console hybrid that's going to run, I guess, a version of Windows, and the rumor was that their big selling point was that you would be able to access your Steam library on that device, which is kind of rough for Microsoft when you think about it, considering we just got the announcement of Steam Machine, and I'm pretty sure that's going to put an even worse hurt on the amount of time that I would entertain playing on the Xbox. And at this point, I think the only thing that would really bring me back to that platform in a significant way will be if one of three different things happen. One, they would have to have just a never-ending string of absolute top-tier exclusives on Game Pass that just could not be missed day one, which I don't think they're going to do. Two is kind of what I already mentioned, where it would have to have some unique value proposition, whether it was something like Game Pass itself, or its commitment to backward compatibility, or it's something kind of in that vein that would still grab my attention and make me feel like, oh, I can only get this from an Xbox. And then three would have to be if there was just some massive influx of all of my online gaming friends just flocking back to the platform, which is probably not going to happen for the lack of reasons 1 and 2. At the end of the day, I really do hope Xbox finds their groove again and really bounces back in a significant way, but honestly, it's not wholly unexpected either, because all of the major game companies have had some issue at some point or another where they, drop the ball in some significant way. Sony's not devoid of sin, neither is Nintendo, Microsoft is no different. None of these companies are going to be perfect, and I'm completely at peace with that. I'm just saying for the Xbox in particular, I really hope they pull a rabbit out of their hat in this next generation that's going to get me and a lot of other people excited about that platform again. But as always, this is just one guy's opinion, so what about you? Are you a huge fan of the Xbox? Have you been playing it since back in the day? Or are you somebody who maybe came into the Xbox later in its console releases? If so, I would love to hear your story in the comments below. As for what's coming up on the channel, originally this video was supposed to be the Gaming in My 40s video, which I'm very excited to make, but I decided to push that off a little bit longer even though you guys voted for it on the community tab, only because I found some old family footage and I want to see if I can find any more of that before I start working on that video, so yeah, stay tuned for that. It should be a fun video to put together. And then as we race towards the end of the year, I will definitely be doing some favorite games of 2025 type videos or what to look forward to in 2026, so stay tuned for that. As always, thank you so much for taking the time out of your day to watch videos here. It really does mean the world to me. Take care, and I will see you on the next one. Bye.